Howdy, and welcome to the Feed Bandit podcast, where we talk all things hunting and introduce you to innovative hunting products and services. If you want to level up your hunting game and gear, be sure to join the hunt. To join the hunt, text the word BANDIT to 345-345. And when you do, you'll join our email list, where we'll send killer deals on innovative hunting products and services, along with entertaining tips and tricks straight to your inbox. Again, text the word BANDIT to 345-345, and we look forward to seeing you on the hunt. Hey folks, Jimmy here. I just wanted to let you know of a killer giveaway contest that we're running right now until the end of July. We're giving away an amazing $250 gift card to Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. If you've been wanting to get some more of that killer gear you've been needing, then you'll definitely want to sign up. Just head on over to feedbandit.com and enter today. And don't forget to refer all your hunting buddies and you'll get additional entries into the contest. Details are at feedbandit.com and click on the giveaway contest link at the top. Good luck!
Well, howdy, folks. Corn Bandit coming back at you here with another solo podcast today, live from beautiful South Fork, Colorado. Today, I am running solo, as I mentioned. My compadre, Mr. Bandito himself, Mr. Jimmy, is back in sweltering Dallas, and I am up here in the mountains of South Fork, Colorado. And so we thought this would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about something that we don't often talk about, and that is fishing. And specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about fly fishing. Every time I come up here to the mountains, whether it's in Mexico or Montana or Colorado, obviously is where I typically go a lot. We like to break the fly reel and the flies out and go fly fishing. And if you've never done it before, it's something that you've really got to experience. Basically, if you like fishing with traditional tackle, okay, whether that be saltwater or freshwater, you got to give fly fishing a try, because the action is so much more fun, especially when you got those fish that hit. And then of course the great thing about fly fishing is that it can really make just the sensitivity of the rod and all that can really make a very small fish feel like a really big fish. So it is an absolute ball. So again, every time I come over here to South Fork, we typically go fly fishing. So wanted to just do a little piece about kind of an intro to that, and then maybe do another one here in another couple of days or so and talk more about the actual gear and techniques. Again, I am not a pro. Okay, I've been doing it for many years now, but I am certainly not a pro. In fact, this will be my first time fly fishing since 2012. And I went out yesterday and did very well. I caught a little brook trout about the size of, about 6 inches or so. And was able to get hooked up with a few more, but unfortunately couldn't seal the deal. But just had an absolute ball. So, again, the fly fishing, I think, has kind of gotten a bad rap sometimes by some folks that think, well, it's a gentleman's type fishing. And in reality, sure. I mean, doing all these little creeks and, you're in, some of these really fancy places that you can go, around the world. I mean, it can be expensive and guides can be expensive and whatnot. But boy, I mean, if you've got a little stock tank, you can fly fish. And as I mentioned, you can catch a whole bunch of fish. Okay. Yeah, it's a little bit more work, sure. But again, the beauty of the fly tackles, it's really rewarding when you get a fish on there to bite. So again, here in South Fork, Colorado, and really in Colorado in general, and actually a lot of the western states, you'll have to excuse me, I'm a little out of breath because I'm sitting at about 8,800 feet right now. But you really have the luxury of being able to pull off to the side of the road, and you have the ability to go hit a creek. And it's amazing when you look at these creeks. And you look at these little streams, you say to yourself, my God, how can there actually be trout in there? But sure enough, there are. And yesterday, I was at the foot of a mountain, and we've got some good video on this. And, of course, I wasn't able to video me actually reeling in the fish, which is really frustrating, but I'm getting better at it. But this little mountain creek, sure enough, had a whole bunch of little brook trout in there. So I was able to able to catch one that was pretty cool. So again, if it's something you've never tried, definitely give it a whirl. Again, especially up here in these mountains and these creeks, it's a lot of fun. As far as learning to actually fly fish, learning to use fly gear. It can be a little bit of a learning curve. There's no doubt about it. You've got to do some practicing. Obviously, with fly fishing, you've really got. I'm kind of getting into the gear section here, but that's okay. You've really got two different types of flies. You've got what we call a dry fly. So that's going to be a fly that actually mimics a bug that lands in the water. Okay, and delving into that a little bit deeper. During the summer in Colorado and really everywhere, you have these hatches of all these bugs, and it's hysterical because you could be in the middle of a hatch, and it's just nothing but hundreds of thousands of insects, all over the water, and you can see the trout surface and blow up on those bugs, and it's really cool to experience. So that is what a dry fly is going to mimic. Is going to be those bugs in the water. Now, people ask all the time, okay, well, how do you know what's on the water? Well, the best thing to do if you're not a local there, or you haven't been to this spot or whatever, is to talk to your local fly shop that's in the area and say, hey, this is where I'm going. What do you think? And flies are not expensive. Okay, I picked up here in South Fork. I picked up like 5 or 6 for about $20. Okay, and you got to remember these things are hand tied. Okay, it's not like you're getting them from a store per se. Like they were done by a machine. They're all done by hand, so which is pretty cool. The second type of fly you've got is I call it a weighted fly. I don't know if that's the proper name, but that's kind of what I call it. And basically, that's a fly that's going to sit below the surface and is going to mimic some sort of insect or maybe even a smaller fish below the surface. And that's actually what I caught my trout on yesterday. Was just a little gold-headed nymph, I think it was. Had little white wings on it. It was super fun and super effective. The great thing about those flies is they are a little bit bigger. They have a little bit, or not bigger necessarily, but they have more weight. So when you're casting, you're able to get those things out there and try to get them to those really, really good areas. So, but as far as poles and reels and rods are concerned, they've got everything under the sun. They've got everything from, I'm sure you could get a $5,000 fishing fly rod if you wanted to, or you could do something what I did. So back in 2012, I actually got from Cabela's. I got a collapsible 4-piece fly rod and reel for $99. Okay, came with a really nice hard case from Cabela's. It folds down to just a couple of feet, which is really awesome if you're backpacking or especially if you're flying. So you can take your gear with you. And again, the little box of flies isn't much bigger than an iPhone 8, something of that nature. So you can actually go out and do those things a lot. You can travel with that kind of tackle a lot easier you can with the conventional stuff where you need the big boxes and things of that nature. So again, that rod and reel combo that I got ended up being about $99. It actually came loaded with what we call the backing, and the backing is going to be the first line that's on the fly reel, and then you actually have what's called your fly line. And your fly line comes in all different types of colors, and I believe they have a sinking one and a floating one. And I've always gone with the floating one. I don't really know what the difference between the two is. And what's nice about that is that floating fly line, after you put your tippet on there, and now the tippet is going to be the piece of line that you actually tie the fly to, and that floating fly line is what's going to keep that tippet and eventually your dry fly, if that's what you're using, on top of the surface of the water. Talking a little bit more about the gear. I know we just touched on the actual fly reels and rods and then the fly line, the backing, and then the tippet. And another thing about the tippet, real quickly, I think is worth mentioning. The tippet is going to be tapered, so it's going to start off really thick, and then it's actually going to it'll get smaller as we go, and that's important to mention, especially for trout. Trout have very, very good vision, as do all fish, but trout apparently have a really good vision. So those thicker lines they can certainly see, whereas with bass and bluegill, I've never had a problem. Really, even just putting a piece of traditional monofilament line on the front or on the fly line itself, and you're in great shape. So that's a little bit about the fly line and the flies. Now, some of the other gear you might want to look at getting. Definitely a pair of little clippers. Okay, they make these one specifically for fly fishing where they'll attach to your vest, or if you have a little satchel, which I do, it comes on one of these expandable or retractable rather devices, so that you're not fumbling around in the middle of a stream with all this kind of stuff. And anyways, they're used obviously just to clip your line. Okay, so you don't have to again be fumbling around with something big. Also, they have a pair of dedicated fly fishing forceps that I really like. The traditional forceps that you've kind of seen in the fishing world obviously have the two little holes where you put your hands in there. And if you got big fingers like I do, I have great sausage fingers. They're really tough to try to work, especially if you're in the middle of a stream, okay, and you're holding your pole and you're holding the flopping little fish, right? So these particular ones that I've got, I think they're actually from Orvis. They've got a thumb hole, and then they've got another little loop piece that you can easily stick a couple of your fingers in, and it will help you, get the hook out of that fish's mouth, and then get the fish back in the water. So, as far as satchels are concerned, or fly fishing vests, again, I think people think of fly fishing, they think of the stereotypical fly fishing vest. It's got that little patch of cotton where you can attach the flies to, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've certainly used one of those in my time. It was actually great. I ended up switching to more of a satchel, and I did that primarily because I get pretty hot, go figure, while I'm out there, and so I have that on there. On the actual satchel, it was a little easier. Not as easy to get my flies and stuff out, but I really try not to change my flies as much as possible. Again, unless I'm in the middle of a hatch and I see the trout are blowing up on this fly, then naturally I'll switch. But I try to avoid it if I have to. So that little satchel is nice because it carries my phone and some of my camera gear and whatnot. And I highly recommend that if you do, whether you go with a vest or with a little satchel that I've got, that you look at getting yourself a waterproof bag. So you can put your keys in there, your phone, maybe your license, things of that nature. Obviously, real important to keep all that stuff dry. There is a good chance if you're out there fly fishing, you're in the middle of a river or a stream, that you will go for a swim. So it kind of gives you a peace of mind that all your gear is going to be taken care of. So, anyways, hope you all have enjoyed this. Again, I am not a pro. Been doing it for a long time. I've managed to catch fish, so I just decided to. This be perfect timing to record one of these. A little bit later in the week, we'll do one more, talking a little bit about technique, where you want to fish, why you want to fish there, things of that nature. So, hopefully by the time we do the second one, I will have learned a little bit more. So, anyways, thanks so much. Take care, and as always, take care of your local feed store. Howdy, folks. Corn Bandit coming back at you with another little solo podcast again. This is going to be part 2, if you will, of the my little fly fishing solo podcast that I'm doing here all by my lonesome. So really in this piece, we wanted to talk really more about, the location, why you'd want to fish there, and some things to look out for as far as, what's a good spot to cast to, so on and so forth. Before we get to that, I was kind of reviewing my last recording, and I realized that I left out a pretty significant piece of it, of gear that's definitely needed, and that's going to be the wading boots and or waders. In southern Colorado, where I do a majority of my fly fishing, again, this is geared more towards those folks that are going to be in the mountain streams and rivers and whatnot. I tend to not wear waders. Okay, I'll wear just a normal fishing shirt, okay, and some shorts, and then but I will most assuredly wear a good pair of wading boots, and I like those wading boots to cover my ankle. and for a couple of reasons why. First and foremost, when you're in a river, and you're facing upstream. Okay, that's something we can mention right now. That's a safety thing. Always face upstream. When you're fishing a river or a creek, especially a river, because boats and flash floods and other things will come down there and potentially ruin your fishing trip. But typically you've got the river rocks below your feet, and then they're big, okay, and they're very smooth, and boy, they just love to smash ankles. So I wear a pair of felt lined dedicated wading boots for that are for fly fishing, and they're really nice because I'm able to walk in them just fine. And again, they protect my ankles if I'm to slip on some of those smooth stones below my feet. So, was just realizing that was a pretty important part of it. The other thing is they drain well too. Okay, if you were to have a pair of just conventional waders, and they got water in them, you'd be in deep trouble. So I've got buddies who wear the actual chest waders, but then they've got the wading boots, that they throw on afterwards. So that's typically that's what they will wear when they're duck hunting. So it just kind of works out. They'll just end up taking their boots, up to when we go fly fishing and wear those, and they'll be in good shape. They do wear a thicker pair of socks, as do I. You're going to have soggy socks, but you can't get around that. So, anyways, again, wanted to mention that piece about the gear. I think it's pretty important. Get you a good pair of boots. It's definitely worth the investment. So, as far as location is concerned, where do you want to try to catch fish? Okay, well, the first segment we sat there and we talked extensively, about fly fishing. Fly fishing doesn't have to be done in the mountains of Colorado, with some dude over your shoulder yodeling and all that kind of fun stuff. All right. It can be done, here in Texas on your traditional stock tank. All right. Again, as I mentioned, the bass and the bluegill, you think they're fun on a conventional fishing tackle. Try with a fly rod. It is fantastic, and it is so much fun, and it will definitely get you hooked for fly fishing. And quite frankly, I think it might be a disappointment when you get those little trout on there. They definitely don't fight as hard as the big bluegill and bass, but I think it's a little bit more rewarding. So, again, fish wherever you use conventional tackle, you can use fly gear. Of course, one of the big problems you're going to have is when you're learning to cast. And casting, obviously with fly tackle is going to be a lot more difficult if you've got, trees and whatnot behind you. So, obviously take that into consideration. So I think we'll spend kind of the balance of this little segment, talking about locations as far as, where typically I fish, again, southern Colorado, which is very similar to a lot of the other states, rivers, streams, creeks, things of that nature. The first one we'll talk about here is going to be rivers. I actually have the privilege of being able to fish the Rio Grande, which is pretty cool because, when we think of the Rio Grande in Texas, obviously there are some areas that are flowing, but it ain't flowing like it does up in Colorado. That I can assure you. It is moving. So that is a lot of fun, and typically what I look for when I'm trying to find a fishable river is, well, first and foremost, I'm looking for a spot where I don't have to get chest deep because that water is snow melt, and it can be extremely cold. So, if I have the option of being able to, to wade into a river, and then maybe make it to a little island out there, that's why I'll definitely try to do that. Or, maybe the river, breaks around a little island, they're kind of in the middle. Those are great spots to fish, and those are good spots to stand. So highly encourage you all to look for those sorts of things. That being said, people will often say, okay, well, you just cast in the middle of the river? And the answer is sure. Yeah, you absolutely can. But a lot very similar to bass fishing and, for anything, okay? Throwing, for redfish, tailing redfish out there in the, in the coastal marsh areas, you want to try to throw to where you think the fish are going to be, okay? And it's the same thing with fly fishing. It's just a little bit more difficult to get your dry fly or your sinking fly out there. So, typically what I look for is, up against the edge of the riverbeds, right? So, if you're making entry on the right side of the river or on the north side of the river and you're going across it, we'll try to fish to the south, okay? And the river's going to be moving. So cast upstream, and I'm actually doing this right now. Cast upstream and then just fall, and then you cast it down there and then just fall. Your fly rod will just follow the leader and the tippet and everything downstream, and then fling it over your back and go back upstream again. And that's kind of what I do to work a bank. All right. I mentioned also, you could find a little island to sit on. Okay. Or maybe there's an area where, the river it kind of turns into like a real shallow pool. All right. That's another good spot to look for. I have found that, brown trout in particular, again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a fishologist. I'm not a fly fishing, major here. I have found that the trout will just kind of hang out there and look for bugs and other invertebrates and whatnot to come swimming by. So, good spot to potentially find a fish. So river fishing is a lot of fun. Typically, it's teeming with life. I mean, I've seen a ton of beavers, a lot of mule deer. What's kind of great is that with the water moving, it kind of covers any noise that you're going to be making, and you typically tend to see some nice wildlife. So, I highly encourage you, fishing rivers. Obviously, always face upstream. Rafting boats can come and get you. And they're looking for you, but you just be careful. Also, flash floods. I mean, those things are really no joke. So, you're fishing rivers. Always again face upstream. As far as creeks are concerned, when I say a creek, that definition can be wide and varying, but typically, for example, I fish the South Fork Creek, and it's probably about 10 yards wide. And again, it's got some areas where the water is running pretty quick. Then it's got some areas where it's got some pools and some little inlets and things of that nature. And how do you attack that particular type of, habitat, if you will, is just kind of like you really were with the river, except you got to be a little bit more stealthy. All right. These fish, a little bit shallower water, they can look up and they can see you and they will spook. So you've just kind of got to move slowly. If you find an area that looks pretty good, again, maybe where the creek kind of runs off to the side and there's some still water there, don't just walk right at it. And for God's sakes, don't walk to the water. Try to stick on the bank. Wear darker colored stuff. Probably should have talked about that in the gear section too. Don't wear your reds and all that kind of stuff. These things ain't blind. All right. But kind of make your way around and try to attack that area. Now that's going to be incredibly important when we talk about fishing, just little streams and whatnot. And I got some firsthand experience of that here in South Fork, Colorado, just today, to be truthful with you. So, but yeah, so the creeks, you got to be a little bit more stealthy and just work them, we, as humans, we tend to believe, it's just impossible. There's no way in God's green earth a fish could be held up right there. Because you just can't see him. The water's running really fast. It looks like it's super shallow, but you'd be surprised. You would be stunned, where these little trout can stay. And also another good spot to target when you have creeks is, where a creek ends up into a river, can be a really good spot too. So, again, when you're fly fishing, you're looking for a spot to go, just think like you do for bass fishing, panfish, or bluegill, crappie, and redfish and whatnot. That's got to be my best advice. I'm moving down to the smallest body of water that you really can practically fish would be the streams. All right. And, again, going back to Colorado's got a whole bunch of these little mountain streams. They call them creeks, but I kind of call them streams. And the reason why is, these things, y'all, these things are not any wider than, I mean, 4 yards, 5 yards, something like that. It's just crazy. And again, they beautiful country. It's fun to walk alongside of those streams, and they wind. Looking at them from an aerial map is pretty cool. In fact, I think that's a really good tip. I just probably should have done myself. Is if you're investigating an area, obviously the Parks and Wildlife Department's got a bunch of maps, but if you know a spot, go onto Google Maps, check it out. It may not be updated, but you might be able to see some areas where there's some you might be able to target because there's not as many willows or whatnot. And I think that's a good tip. So, but with the streams, much like the creeks, you got to be stealthy. Okay. These little fish, and I say little, okay, typically in the streams, you get the brook trout, although my buddy caught a good, probably almost a foot long, brown trout in these things, but they're looking right up there at you. Okay. And they can definitely see you. So, got to wear darker clothes, got to be stealthy. And kind of my secret to my success on this trip has been really just to sneak around and to find these areas where, the stream is running again, but then it kind of lets off. And then the water gets real still. Okay. And what I would do was, and you're really not even casting. Okay. Because, again, with the stream being, 4 yards wide, you can literally just let out some line, let your fly, flow down the stream, and then it inevitably will go into that calm area, and that's where I was catching the majority of my trout. So it was a lot of fun. It was a good thing too, because as you'll see in the video I'll be posting hopefully here soon, the casting, even for somebody like me who's been doing it a long time, was just really impossible. And I lost quite a few flies trying to cast with all those willow trees. So again, my advice for fishing these mountain streams and whatnot is just be stealthy. Don't feel like you've got to cast it. Okay. Use the water to your advantage. And if you've got an area where, you got a stream, okay, and it's rolling pretty good, and then it kind of maybe takes a corner over to the left, right? And there's this little pool over to the right, just right before it turns, and there's some calmer water there. Well, sure, you could probably cast to it, right? But why not do it natural like? Let out a bunch of line from your reel, okay? Then put your rod tip in the water, let that fly float down there. And maybe try to get in that little pocket. That looks pretty natural, right? Because that's what the trout's looking for. That trout is looking for bugs and invertebrates and other fish, I guess, flowing down there. So give that a whirl. And again, that's what I did, and then was very successful. So again, I'm not a pro, never have been, never will be. I really enjoy the hell out of fly fishing. It's relaxing, it's different. And it's a lot of fun. So, any questions or anything of that nature, feel free to contact us. We're always here to help. Hopefully again, I'll be putting this video up here. I actually did get I think I got a couple of videos of me catching some fish. So, a lot of fun. Check it out. Thanks so much for once again for following us. We really appreciate it. And remember, support your local feed store.
Thanks for listening to the Feed Bandit podcast. Just a reminder to text the word bandit to 345-345. And when you do, you'll join our email list where we'll send killer deals on innovative hunting products and services, along with entertaining tips and tricks straight to your inbox. You don't want to miss out. So again, text the word bandit to 345-345, and we look forward to seeing you on the hunt. Until next time, have a good one, and remember to support your local feed store.